Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from AlexMercedCoder.dev, and welcome to part 4 of this soda app build. Well, basically we created our index and show route. So again, the index route, so again, if we're looking at our RESTful routes, index should be to the model name, so /soda. So if I go back to this is the index route, list all the items of that particular model. If I click on one of those, see I go to the model /ID, so soda / the ID of the individual soda, and it gives me information on that individual soda. So now I'm able to read the data. So when we talk about CRUD, create, read, update, delete, and applying these RESTful routes to create that CRUD functionality, okay, we've created the read functionality. But now what we want to do is create the create functionality. So there's two routes that create the create functionality. So here in green, it's the new and create routes. So the new route is going to actually create the page that has the form to fill out to create a new soda. So that's going to be /soda/new. And then the create route is going to be the route when we submit that form, receives the data from the form, and creates the new soda in this case in our array. If we were working with a database, it would create it in a database. So we're simulating that. So in that case, what we need to do is create a new function in our model that handles creation. So again, models views controller. So first we're going to go to the models. Okay. So we're going to head over to our model, because right now all our model does is have a function to get all the sodas and get one of the sodas. Now we need to create a folder, a function that will create a soda. So function will pass it the new soda. So that argument will just be an object that represents the new soda. And what it's going to do is going to take that array, this.data, and it's going to push that object into that array. And that's all it's going to do. Okay, so that function is now added. So again, all it's doing is literally just pushing. And again, we're using this because, again, these are functions inside the object. And when you use the function keyword in a method of the object, this refers to the object itself. So when I say this.data, I'm referring to this data property, which is this array of sodas. Okay, so just to get the idea there, what's kind of going on here. And again, I exported this object, and this object I'm using in my controller to do all these soda operations. So I have my soda model to do all this soda stuff. Okay, now generally the show route, when you're doing this whole 7 RESTful routes pattern, the show route should be the very last route. The reason being is that this route has a very distinct possibility of eating up some of your other routes. I'm not going to get too deep into why right now, but the idea is it'll take like the word new and treat it as a param, or the word edit and treat it as a param, and we don't want that. So you put the other routes above it. So in this case, I want to put the new. So we're going to make the new route, which is going to be like /soda/new, which should render a page with a create form, a form to create a new soda. And then we're going to have our create route. Okay, and again, this is a get request. So we got to make sure we specify what kind of request we're making. Then we're going to have a create route, which is going to be a post request to /soda, which just creates a new soda. And then it's going to redirect us back to the index page. Okay, so we can begin the process. So first, let's actually get that whole form up. Okay, so let's just create the route. So this is our controller. Again, models views controllers. So models is where we created all the ways we interact with our data. So all our functions that interface with our data. Then here in the controllers, we're creating these routes that determine, hey, what requests, and then brings everything else to come together, the templates from the views and the functions from the models. And then we have our views, which are the templates that say, okay, hey, this is a template for how a page we want to create. Okay, so the new route, a page with a create form, so we're going to say like router.get. And this is going to be, again, /new, because, again, we don't have to write /soda because that's already assumed by the router since we registered that router with the main page. Okay. Rec_res. Okay, rec res. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to render. So res.render. We're going to render a template. Again, I always like to name the template after the route. So it's going to be inside that soda folder, and it's going to be called not show.ejs, new.ejs. We don't need to send it any data because we're not dealing with any existing to-dos or the array of to-dos. We are just creating a new to-do. So I can just render that template. Good. That's fine and dandy. So now I'm going to go over here, head over to my soda folder in my views. So again, in my views folder, I have a folder for all my soda views. And again, if I had a blog model, then I have a blog folder for all my blog views and so forth and so forth. It's all about organizing your code. Again, the whole point of this MVC architecture is just to kind of have a blueprint for how you organize your code, so that way all of us kind of understand why we're putting certain code in certain places. We understand sort of like what functionality are we focusing on. So in the models, I'm focusing on data. In the views, I'm focusing on the view, the visual. And then the controllers, I'm focusing on sort of handling those requests and putting those things together. Okay. Cool. So soda. I'm going to create a new view. So we'll call it new.ejs. I'm going to just borrow that head tag. So again, we have our include, so we can include the head tag and have anything from our head kind of included, so that we only need to write our head tag once. Okay. The beauty of EJS, we can, we'll avoid having to rewrite code because we can use all this logic to construct those HTML files. The beauty of server-side templating. Okay, so I have that head.ejs there. And what we want to do is create a form. So we're going to say, hey, h1 form to create a to-do, not a to-do, a soda. And then we're going to create a form. Okay. Now, form should take two properties that are going to be really important. It's going to take an action. That means what URL, so when we submit this form, what URL should the data from the form be submitted to? Okay. So that's going to be /soda/ well, actually just /soda. Okay, because we go back to our RESTful routes, that's the create route. What is it? Just the name of the model. So it would be /soda, but it's going to be a post request because that's the convention. That's the rule book that's been designed by us programmers that we've all been following for years and years and years. And we follow that because that way when I work with another programmer, we both at least have some foundational agreement of what to expect from each other. Okay, do we have to do it this way? No, but if everyone just did it the way they feel like doing it, then it would be a lot harder to communicate and write code that each other understands because we don't have some sort of rule book that we're playing from. Okay, these standards just help us save time because I don't have to explain every detail to you. I can just say, hey, can you go create the create route for the blog feature? And then you would know, okay, hey, I am creating the post route to /blog for this new feature we created because we've all learned what the RESTful routes are. We all know what MVC is, so we can communicate those tasks to each other much more effectively. Okay. Okay. Form, action, soda, but then also we wanted to say the method. An HTML form by default can only do two things. It can do a get, which you don't want to do when you submit a form. The reason being is that then all the data shows up in the URL bar. So generally you want to hide the data. You don't want other people seeing what their form submissions are. You can expose passwords that way. So anything other than a get will hide the data, as far as not showing up in the URL bar. But the form only has one other option, post. That's going to be a problem later when we want to delete and do puts and deletes to follow our RESTful conventions. That's where method overrides are going to help us later on. It's going to help us deal with the sort of limitation of HTML forms because HTML forms have existed longer than RESTful conventions, so they have certain limitations that didn't. Again, you can't change the default way things work. So there's been ways to work around that to follow sort of practices that have developed. Okay, but this is going to basically say, hey, when I submit the form, it's going to make a post request to /soda with the data from the form. Okay, cool. And then we're going to have a route that's going to handle that request that gets made. So basically we want to have inputs in the form that match our model. So we have to go back and take a look at our model. So for every soda has a name, a color, and ready to sell. So we need to kind of have inputs that match those three properties. Two of them are strings, so those are going to be pretty easy. But the third one is a Boolean. So we got to think, okay, what kind of input do we want for a Boolean? Okay, so I'm going to head over to new. And again, the first ones will be easy. Index. Not index. Input. The type should equal text because that's generally the best choice for strings. Now you have to give it a name. This is very important. Whatever the name property is going to be, what happens is that we're going to get an object on the other end. So basically our route is going to get this object with the data from the form. Whatever name we give it, that's the name of that property in that object. We want it to match our model. So our standard, when we take a look at our model of sodas, the property is called name. So that's what we should match. So name should be name, color should be color, ready to sell should be ready to sell. That should be the name property on each of those inputs because it needs to match to make sure everything is consistent. Okay, or you'll run into problems. Okay, that's why it's important to have an agreed upon data model so everyone agrees each object of that data type has these property names that are of this type of data. Okay, because the minute you start deviating from that agreed upon plan, things start breaking in the code because code doesn't know how to adapt to, it's built generally, I'm built to handle, something I wrote might be built to handle a string, but if you throw a Boolean at it, it gets confused and throws an error. So we need to make sure that it's consistent. What's expected to be a string is always a string, and what's a Boolean is always a Boolean, so that way our code doesn't break. Okay? So it's important to kind of us follow the contract we have with each other, those agreed upon standards. And that's what a data model is. It's a contract that we're all agreeing on, that throughout the code, we're going to assume that an object of this type, in this case a soda object, will always look this way. It'll always have a name property that's a string. It'll always have a color property that's a string. And it'll always have a ready to sell property that's a Boolean. That's our contract. We got to stick to that. So I got to build my form with that in mind. So I'm going to have an input called text that should take a string, and that's going to handle the name property. And then again, you generally want to have a placeholder. A placeholder just kind of puts like this little grayed out text so people know what that field is for. So I'll put like enter name here. Okay, and there's the input. That's all I got to do there. Then I am going to put, okay, so what I want to do now is the second one should be the color. So enter color here. And then here's where things get interesting. Now for ready to sell, okay, but we don't need a placeholder because it's just a little checkbox. Because what we're going to do is we're going to use a checkbox type input. Okay, that's because you either check it and it's true, or it's checked off and it's false. That's sort of like the way we want to treat it. Okay, and next we'll put in the submit button. So type equals submit. And the value is what's going to say on the submit button, which is going to, we'll say create to do. Okay, so there's our form. Our form is done. Okay, now we just need to get it to work. First thing we need to do is we need to have a link to that. So on our index page, let's add like a link, ahref equals /soda /new. That's the URL we're linking to. And we'll just put like create new soda. Okay. And then what's going to happen is that let's create our route for that to handle that. So our create route. So we need a post route. So that's going to be router.post. And again, that's going to slash, because it's just /soda. And right now, we're not going to finish it all up right now. We're just going to say rec res. We just want to test to see if we're getting the actual form data. If the form data is being properly submitted, we should see it. We're going to send it back as JSON for now. We should see it in rec.body. Okay, rec.body should be an object that is the data from the form. Okay, we should see it there. So let's see if that's the case. So let me go back to the main page. So back to /soda. /soda. And see, there's my create new soda. That should take me to the form. And see, there's the form. So now if I say, hey, let's create a cream soda, and it will say color, yeah, it was like a light brown. Okay, and we'll just say it's not ready to eat. If I hit create to do, let's see what happens. Nothing. That means I did not get the body. Like the data, the data from the form didn't arrive. Now here's the story. Technically it did, but the thing is that it comes in a particular like type of data. So like it basically the way it would look like, which you don't see, is that the data gets sent at the end of the URL. Like it sends this string that it would look like this. It would be like name equals cream soda, and color equals light brown. It sends it like a URL. This is referred to as URL encoded. So it's actually encoded in that format, in the same way you would encode a query string. That's how forms submit data. So that's just how HTML forms by default work. But Express by default doesn't know how to parse that. You need middleware to do that. So we actually have to go back to server.js and we need to add a piece of middleware so that way when URL encoded data is inside the request, it knows to parse it. So it's built into Express, so we just have to do express.url encoded. You have to add this object. It's just something you have to do, extended true. Don't worry about why, it's just something you have to do. And what this is going to do is going to parse HTML form data. This is what's going to make the form data become available in rec.body. Okay, so that's what this is. That's why this is important. Without this, this is not going to be. In the same way, if you were receiving JSON data, you would need express.json to parse JSON requests. Okay, because that data can that body of that whatever that data is coming in the body could come in different types of formats: XML, JSON, URL encoded data. So you need middleware that detects what type of data it is and breaks it up and parses it for you. So now let's try it out again. So now if I go back to /soda, I go create a new soda. Let's try this again. Cream soda. Okay, light brown. I hit create to do. Okay, that still didn't quite look right. Porque. After I use express that URL encoded. That URL encoded. Oh, okay. Here's why. Okay. What's happening is that technically, see the router is up here. That router should be down here. So what's happening is that the router is being hit before the URL encoded middleware runs, which is gonna mean that basically it never gets parsed. So I got to move this line down. That's why that's happening. Okay, so now let me try that again. So let's go back and do this again. So let's see here. Cream soda, light brown. I hit create to do. And see, now it's working. So you see, now I see that data in there. But like, I don't see like a property for ready to eat. So what happens if I do check it off? What do I see? Okay, and I see it's like a string called on. Okay, so basically, when it's off, this is what I get. When it's on, this is what I get. Let's keep that in mind. That's going to be important. Okay, that when it's true, it's going to say on. Okay, so this is good. See, now I've tested it out first. I know that I'm getting the data. I can now go back to my route and actually write the logic to create the soda. So we're going to head back to our controller file where our routes are. And now I know that I can say soda, because again, we have our soda. We created that create function earlier. And that create function, we can pass rec.body. The problem is that rec.body may not have the ready to sell. And the ready to sell is not a Boolean. You either get a string called on or nothing. So that's not what we want. It needs to be true or false. So what I need to do before I do that is make sure I fix that rec.body property. Rec.body.ready-to-sell. Okay, what I want to do is just say this. Yeah, rec.body.ready-to-sell equals rec.body.ready-to-sell. if that's true, because technically if it's a string, that's going to be true, then it should be true. And again, if it doesn't exist and it's going to be undefined, which is false, so then it should be false. Okay, so that then sets it to true or false. And then we can create the soda. And then what we do is just send them back to the main page. So we'll do res.redirect, which then just sends them back to another page. So we'll say send them back to /soda, the index route. Okay. So now I should be able to create soda. So let me go back to the main soda page. So if I create a new soda, it takes me back over here. We'll create our cream soda of light brown. We're going to say it is ready to sell. I hit create to do, and look, cream soda has now been added. I can create a new soda, and I click on the page, and look, it's ready to sell. Yay! Okay, we now have the ability to create data. So we have the ability to read data. We have the ability to create data. Okay, so again, we've now done 4 of our RESTful routes. We've done index, new, create, and show. Index generates a page with all of the things. Show, which creates a page with one of the things. New, which gave us a form to create a thing. And then when we submit that form, it sends the data to the create route, which then creates the thing. So all we have left are edit, update, and destroy. We'll do edit and update in the next video. I'll see you there.